Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Unique Peace. I'm Janice. I am the Quiet Healer. I am an intuitive medium and Reiki Master Teacher on Long Island, New York. And today we're going to be talking with Jennifer Lawson. Jennifer started out in the fashion industry and worked her way into personal training. And now she is working with adolescents because of the importance of mental health and wellness and the effect that the pandemic has really had on our adolescents if we really took a toll there. So, everybody, welcome Jennifer. Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning, Janice. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm
Oh,
so
it's
excited to be here.
so you started off in the fashion industry. So everything that I've noticed in your timeline is you went from fashion, which is kind of all about looks to an extent and just looking good. And then you went into personal training, again, about looking good, but now feeling good. And you've gravitated over to mental wealth and wellness. That sounded weird. Mental health and wellness, specifically for the adolescents. And I commend you for that because that, as a mother of a teenager, that can be hard even without a pandemic involved. There's so much
Yes.
going on and growing up.
Yeah.
So discuss how you went from one to the other to where you landed now.
Well, originally, so fashion has always been one of my passions. I didn't want to rhyme, but I did anyway. Um, and coming out of college, you kind of don't know which way to go or what to do. I just found myself in that industry and did love it. I worked in Manhattan, lived close to Manhattan, so it was a nice, easy commute. But as I progressed through this thing called life, if you will, I had met my ex-husband, and he lived pretty far away from the city, too far for um, a good life to be able to hold down a good life together. So I had to
Right.
make a transition and choice, if you will, to do I stay within my career path or do I transition into something else that was also always a passion. I've been inside the gym since I was a teenager, former athlete, and it just translated very easily to also having the flexibility to become a family person, raise my own children, but still be working outside of the home in another part of what I do gravitate towards, which is, I guess you could say, overall aesthetic being what was the former priority. And then, yes, I did evolve from there into a mental health counselor, focusing on. I also do, outside of adolescents and teenagers, I do also work with prenatal and postpartum women. Um,
Beautiful.
so my so my focus is women from young ages and onward, if you will.
Wonderful. And Michael is joining us and saying good morning. So we want to say good morning to Michael. Thank you for joining us. And yes, so when you didn't mention that part in your bio, and when I was doing a little bit of research, why did you gravitate towards postpartum women and neonatal? Because my son was a preemie and I didn't have that support.
Okay.
And then I know lots of women who have suffered from postpartum because it's hard. It's just, as you know, you have two kids yourself. It's just hard. Jennifer, where are you?
Oh, I'm here. I can hear you. I'm sorry. I was listening to your question. That's all.
So when you what made you gravitate, I guess, towards postpartum and neonatal um, mental health?
Well, I have, being within the fitness industry and a personal trainer, I also then began engaging in competing. I was a former competitor in the figure industry. Division, which is part of the bodybuilding world.
Okay.
And being backstage within that element, I did engage with a lot of women that I noticed there was a disconnect. And I couldn't put my finger on it at the time until I actually chose to stop competing. And then I realized that there was a major emotional disconnect that women were experiencing when they would dive so heavily into competing and the fitness industry. Um, and then I took a step back and I reevaluated even myself and what
Okay.
I was doing and what I was looking for. And it was after having my son, I realized that there was, like I said, a major disconnect. And that's when I dove headfirst into the mental health end of things to figure out what that disconnect was. And being that I was in what would be considered the master's division, because I was over a certain age, a lot of the women that I was engaging with were postpartum. and trying to find themselves again after
Yeah.
having children. And that is when I realized that postpartum needs more attention as well. Um, so I, when I do something, I do something 110%. And I made a lot of different connections within the industry. And one of the women that I am now partners with in our program is a former Olympian who we are international with our coaching program. And we focus solely on prenatal, postpartum women, career-based women that, for lack of a better phrase to use, have lost themselves in motherhood.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say ever losing yourself in motherhood, of course, because you are also finding so much of yourself, but your identity does become questioned, if you will.
Right. It's the who am I now? I'm a mom, but okay, now I can't be. We're kind of, if you go back to the mentality of, I'm only going to go back to like the 50s and 60s, you go back to that mentality of, now you're a mom, this is your life. And it's, no, more contemporary. It's like, no, I've got like 7 different versions of me, and now I'm just trying to find me in
Right,
these
exactly,
different
exactly.
versions. Yeah.
And having that label, there's nothing more precious than being a mom, of course, and nothing more important. But then your personal identity, because you're always a mom,
Hmm.
but you have a temporary amount of time that you spend with your children to where they then have to become their own people
Right.
outside of you. But if you lose yourself in that 18 to 20-year span, then your children are grown, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait,
Who am I?
who am I? Where'd I
Exactly.
go? And what happened?
Right.
So,
And I think that it's beautiful that you're working with that population, and you've gravitated over to the adolescent population. And can we discuss that for a minute? What you had mentioned, the pandemic. What really triggered? What was your trigger point? Like, wait, we're going to have a problem. These kids need help.
honestly, it was seeing my own children and how they were responding to the situation that we were dealt, and how behaviorally they became challenged, academically they became challenged. And then as I evolved in my programs that I was offering, I made a connection with a local guidance counselor, and we started talking briefly. And then all of a sudden he was like, like, let's evolve, let's expand on this thought process and how we can really offer
Oh,
these
wonderful.
kids something more. And that's when I started working with teenage girls in particular. And it was honestly the trigger for most of the girls that I work with was that they were starting to exhibit eating challenges because they didn't know how to respond
Yeah.
to, of course, the overall situation. So a lot of times at that age, the only thing you have control over is your eating habits and or food and things like that.
Understood.
Being in the fitness industry and of course gravitating forward from there, um, that's how I landed with the
The
teenagers that I do have now.
Yes, and as someone who has had eating challenges, and still at times they exist, and
They
that's
never
very
go away.
important. They never go away. No, and it's very hard to explain to people that they never go away. I was anorexic. Well, I still struggle with it, but it started around the age of middle school.
Mhm.
Um, Actually, I think right before, but middle school up until I went to college. And I was blessed. My roommates might get mad at me, but I'm not saying any names. I was blessed with my freshman year roommate. She had an eating disorder as well, so we were there for each other. And then sophomore through senior year, another roommate, and we were accountability partners. It's like, did you eat today? No. Did you? No. So we would go and eat together.
I love
So,
that.
so there I was blessed, because I don't know if I would have survived if I didn't have that support.
Right,
And so
right.
catching it early and bringing it to the forefront for these girls is beautiful and important. And thank you.
No, I love being able to be there as just a sounding board. Some days it's not even discussing when I work with them, it's not even discussing their eating habits or their
Mhm.
wellness goals or things like. Sometimes it's just having somebody else to tell whatever went on that day in school to. and it not be a parent or a teacher or a lot of the girls I work with, they do have psychiatrists and different therapy groups that they're involved in. And that's so very clinical. And I love being able to be that outside, like, let's just go for a walk and talk, or let's just go grab a cup. Well, they drink hot cocoa and I'll grab a cup of coffee and like, let's do
Let me give
something
you
totally different. I will go to the gym with them on occasion and get a workout in, and we'll talk as we're just walking on the treadmill if it's too cold out or something like that, just to take them outside of all of their normal scenes, environments, and make them feel normal. There's nothing, and I don't like to sit there and say that there's nothing ever wrong with any of the girls. Nothing ever wrong. We all just have very different circumstances we have to deal with.
Right. And those challenges were exacerbated by not being able to go out for a year and a half, 2 years.
Exactly. And not being able to experience those little things that mean so much, like, local parks, I know, were even shut down. You weren't even allowed to walk through local parks. So being able to do that makes a huge difference. Plus, movement is always therapy. It makes you feel like you are accomplishing something, and there is a fulfillment factor that comes into play after the fact. So I like to incorporate some sort of movement into everything that we do too. So, those little things make a difference. And just knowing that the changes that I see, even like rosy cheeks, seeing rosy cheeks makes me so happy in a 13-year-old.
It's important. It's very, very important, because it's a good sign of health. Even if your rosy cheeks are caused by, the wind, it's a sign of health.
Right.
And so, working with these girls and working with your own children and the women that you work with, how do you carve out time for yourself and find peace? What makes Jennifer peaceful?
Movement has always been a go-to for me, but at the same time, I have also challenged that thought process with many of the people that I do work with, because they could also be a distraction. So my peace comes from reading daily devotionals. I do set alarms to remind myself to stop whatever I'm doing, and even if it's 5 minutes, I do, like at 9:55 at night before I go to bed, there's a reminder that goes off to stop and do what I'm going to do before going to bed. So I take those moments to really reset my mind. Up until just this past July, I did also teach fitness classes, and that was a big release for me. That was a big place of peace for me, because yes, working with the challenges that I experience with the ladies and the teenagers that I work with, it can be exhausting. It's exhausting. And it's absorbing a lot of negative. It really is. So teaching or doing something of that nature was always a really strong positive release for me that provided a lot of positive intake of energy. So I miss that on occasion, but my schedule became so compromised, and I really wanted to focus a lot more on just my teenagers and giving that time back to them. So the time that I find for myself, like I said, are the little reminders I set throughout the day to set into a devotional, read a couple pages of whatever book I'm reading, journal, do things like that are giving back to myself, gratitude journaling, to express how blessed I am to be able to do what I'm doing. Because if I don't remind myself, as we're human, sometimes those thoughts behind are like, can creep in, and I don't ever want to feel that. Not anymore.
No, I understand that completely. And so, in working with the various populations that you work with, how do you feel you bring peace?
Being that sounding board, being that potential voice of reason, the outsider perspective. I have been told on many occasions that I'm not the norm, which I'm like,
Take
what is
that
the
as
norm?
a badge of honor, lady.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I question, I'm like, what is the norm? Like, I don't ever want to fit into that box or that stereotype that everyone's painting as the norm.
I have an awesome response to that. I was like, why can't you be normal? I am normal for me.
Who says I'm not? Don't listen to them.
Exactly.
And again, just being real, being raw. I have it, you're taught to do certain things a certain way, even through counseling certifications and counseling studies and all of the studies that you're taught to do things a certain way. And I truly believe that if it just doesn't feel right for you, regardless of what you're taught or not, then it's not right. And the people that gravitate towards you absorb everything in a positive way when you're displaying it that way. And the ones that aren't absorbing it that way won't mesh with you, and they won't be a part of your day to day or your life or, your program. So I'm okay with just really holding strong to what I believe is the absolute best way to handle bringing
And
peace to
that
whoever I'm able to.
and that goes along with teachers. The best teachers meet their students where they're at. They understand that not all students learn the same, and you have to reach them differently. And there are some teachers that are by the book. I've got to do it this way. And then there are some teachers who are like, it's not reaching you. We'll figure this out. You need to
Right.
know it. We'll figure it out on how to get you to where you need to be. And I always found, even in growing up, that those were my best teachers, because
Yep.
having some dyslexic issues in life, I was like, it's not that I wasn't smart, because that's how people make you feel. It's like, oh, you're dyslexic. You're not smart. And it's like, no, my brain just processes the information differently.
Right.
So my struggle was always in math. Math and sciences were not my friend because the numbers don't compute for me.
Right.
So it was always a struggle. And I was blessed with having several good teachers that explained it differently. Like geometry, I had to correlate to art. Oh, that makes sense now. Okay, so those are the best ways to do it. So finding peace and bringing someone peace where they're at and working with them so that they have that calmness is just so beautiful.
Yeah, I 100% agree. 100% agree that and that's exactly the beauty in what I'm able to do, is that I work individually. So I'm able to really sit there and dissect what these women, ladies, young women need individually and figure out, because there's a solution for everything. It's just a matter of really dissecting it enough to find that solution for that person.
Yes. Yes. And it doesn't matter what the struggle is. Marie Florio, she has a book called Everything is Figure Outable. And it's a really great book. And it does address, like, you think you have the struggle, you think you have this problem, approach it from different perspectives, approach it from a different angle. It's like, oh, wait, I didn't think about it that way. And boom, light bulb.
Right,
So,
right. And that is really when, and that goes hand in hand with even why people experience anxiety. It's because they think that there's a problem that can't be fixed a lot of the times, when there's a solution for everything. It's just you really have to dissect what the challenge is for you, not for the person next to you, not for the person 3 blocks away, but for you. And then and there's always a solution. There's always a path.
right. And being a mom and the challenges of motherhood in and of itself, but how do you feel you bring peace to your kids, especially?
I am so sorry. I don't know if you just saw the little cat touch that.
It's fine. We have a cat. We know.
She finds her way into things. I'm sorry. So being a mom, you were saying.
Being a mom, how do you find bringing peace to your kids? What are some of the things that we can do as mothers and parents to bring peace to our kids?
I feel the number one thing we can do as parents is just be present for where they are in that moment too. Just like you said, meet them where they're at. Understand why they might be reacting. As having children, you see that they react. They don't respond just yet because they don't understand the concept of response, but they do react at certain ages until they are adults and have to go through many stronger challenges. But again, being present and sometimes taking a step back and putting ourselves into their position at that point in time, regardless of how old they are.
Right.
Because a lot of times we'll try to parent them from a 40-something-year-old perspective, my perspective. I'm speaking to myself. You can't do that with a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 12-year-old.
No.
Because their brain. And I physically get down to their level. I'll get on my knees in front of my daughter and just look at her and be like, okay, let me hold you for a minute and figure this out. Even if it's not that they're in a full-blown tantrum or a full-blown fit, just you can see them getting a little overwired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's just take a breather. Practice the pause. I love this. Practice the pause.
I love that. Practice the pause. I am with my teenager, I try and remember what I was like, and that's not always easy, and you don't want to call home about that one. What was I like? Now you got to remember, it's like, okay, I remember doing X, Y, Z, and just don't do what I did, please. And being that safe space, I found that my son will come to me more if he knows I'm his safe space.
Right. Right. And being able to be who they are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, my son has come to me with some interesting information, and it's like he trusts me enough to give it to me, and he's like, well, waiting to see what my reaction is, and it's like, okay, I'm not real thrilled that you did XYZ, but what did you learn when you did ABC or XYZ? And letting him know that I'm here, not necessarily impressed with the behavior, but here if he needs me.
Right.
That
Right.
I think brings him a little bit of peace. So that's
I think it's also so important that we do allow our children to, we want to be their disciplinarian, right? But at the same
yeah.
time, they need to experience doing wrong on their own. We can't shield them from it all because they
Mhm.
do also have to figure out, once they get to teenage years and forward, how to navigate through situations when we aren't always going to be present. And that, I think, just goes hand in hand on building that foundation of independence too.
Right.
But then also, like you said, being that safe space for them to come to and talk to you about it, so then you can offer an adult perspective.
Mhm. Yeah. He recently had an experience at the beginning of the year that he should have known better, and he knows this. There was an incident at school. His phone got taken away. There was an incident during lunch. He got in school suspension. He got ISO, but he had to go to a separate room. What they didn't tell me, it was for his own safety, because of what the student is on the spectrum,
Okay.
and he was a freshman, and my son got egged on, and it was like, didn't we learn this lesson last year? And so when the dean of students called me and she was explaining everything, and she's like, I have his phone, and I'm like, he didn't learn anything last year. She goes, I love you. You're one of those parents I love. It's like, apparently he didn't learn his lesson. And as they were explaining the punishment, it was like, okay, yeah, that seems fair, you know?
Hmm.
And I'm not one of those parents who's gonna freak out unless I feel it's egregiously wrong.
Right.
So it's like, okay. And then when he came home and he's like, yeah, they put me in school suspension in a different room for my own safety. I'm like, explain this to me. And so, letting him know that, okay, well, they did it to keep you safe. And did we learn anything this time? Because I don't want to go through this next year.
And will it continue? But will the learning be remembered? I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. The learning always continues. It's the memory problems.
Right. Right. We sometimes have that issue too, though, don't we?
Yeah. Yes, we are guilty. We are absolutely guilty. So, if you were to just take a step back, and like a friend or your best friend, your sister-in-law, whomever were to come to you and just say, like, I'm overwhelmed, I can't do this anymore. I've just hit my breaking point, my tipping point, and I feel like I'm going to tip over. What advice would you give them that anybody could use when it comes to finding peace? And what do you have in your toolbox that anybody can use?
Well, the first thing, practice the pause. Literally, take a second, breathe, understand that right now it feels a lot heavier than what the overall situation probably is, but it's because you haven't been able to find the right path to solve the issue that you're experiencing. And now let's talk through what's going on. What is the situation? And then again, it's not, there won't be an immediate fix, but being able to take a step back, evaluate the situation. And then when they say they're at their breaking point, possibly, to the point where I've dealt with women where I can't get out of bed. How do you get out of bed type of situation? And I tell them literally 1 foot out of the bed.
Yep.
That's it. Just put 1 foot on the ground. You don't even have to put both of them on the ground at the same time. We all know that we can put one foot on the ground and then put the other one on the ground and then sit. Don't stand, just sit. Sit in that moment. And it's a matter of just being really, really present in the feelings that you are experiencing. Because once you actually feel what you're feeling, you can figure out how to overcome that feeling. It's when you become overwhelmed with the feelings and not recognize what exactly it is that you're feeling, that's when it feels like the entire world is crashing in and you don't know how to figure it out.
Nice.
But again, many people have, and this is just a blanket statement, I guess you could say, from what I've experienced, is everyone jumps ahead too many steps forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we have to learn to not do. Don't jump. Even, and I, everyone's like 1 day at a time. I bring it back and I say, no, 15 minutes at a time. Break out your hour. Break it down to 15 minutes at a time. Because even 1 day ahead can become overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because we still don't know what tomorrow may potentially bring. But we could probably see 15 minutes ahead of us, even maybe 30 minutes ahead of us. But sometimes even 3 hours ahead of us is too far to look ahead. So let's just break it down even smaller. And that's the one thing outside of practicing the pause is to just go 15 minutes from now. Don't look ahead any further than that. And I feel that that has really helped a lot of people that I work with. A lot of people.
Beautiful. And since we are discussing like the adolescent and younger portion of our population, what can parents do to help their kids find peace?
This is a hard one to talk to because every situation is super individual. Outside of being very present, realize that your children don't necessarily need more than just you as their parent, and that's honest. And again, this could be a potential blanket statement that I'm making, and it could catch some people a little off guard. But we've come into a generation where parents don't realize how important it is for you to be there and with your children instead of trying to provide them with something else outside of your actual attention. And that's just one thing that I really need to drive home more of with a lot of people that I do spend time with is just be here with your children. Recognize that they don't need anything more than you.
You,
And
especially
then
the younger ones, they just
yeah,
want to know that that you're there.
there. And that sense of abandonment that, you know, goes hand in hand with, again, the way the world is nowadays, parents have to work and we have to provide for our children and we have to almost be absent.
Yeah.
So it's really, really important to find whatever time you can. Don't use that work as your excuse and then try to filter in something else to take the place of you, because there's nothing that's ever going to take that place of you.
Right.
And that's what that's a point I really feel the need has to be driven home a lot more.
I agree. That, as I don't know about yourself, but for me, when I had to put my son in childcare and he was good until, 18 months old and that separation anxiety kicks in, it's like, wait, mom's leaving me. And then when he was younger, anytime they switched classrooms, he would it's like, I don't know this person. What am I dealing with? It's like, okay, mom's leaving. Okay, I trust Miss Penny now. And then all of a sudden, Miss Penny becomes Miss So-and-so and Miss So-and-so. And over the years, so that separation anxiety is real, especially for parents who don't leave their kids with family. So
Right.
it can see the sense of abandonment creep into the little one's eyes.
Right. And then they don't know how to deal with that. And then, of course, every day is a learning for us as parents, too. I don't have it figured out yet. If somebody's got it figured out, please let me know. I'd like that manual.
Yes,
but we just
too.
take it we take it in stride too. And but the one thing is making sure that you do set, because yes, they will change even when they get older into their teenage years and they're going from one class to the next to the next. It's a constant flow of people interaction and unknown people and new people. And the one constant should always be their home. But if you're not 100% present when you're home with them and feel as though you can make it up some in other ways, it doesn't translate until the children get older and then can recognize it on their own. But by then it could be a little too late. and certain habits and routines could creep into that child's day to day that becomes that much harder to break later on in life.
I agree 100%. And I have always tried to be there for my son the way you are with your kids and guiding other people. And it's not necessarily easy to always just be there because there's the cleaning of the house and the laundry and all of the cooking and everything like that. It's a little easier when they're teenagers and they don't want you around, but they want you around.
They do.
It's like, go over there. It's like, I don't want to, they can't know you exist, but
Right.
do you have $10?
Or can you take me here? Drive me there?
Okay, yeah, it's like, but I try not to be too intrusive, but that's hard. And when I say intrusive, I like to have a conversation, keep that communication open so that he does know. It's like, you can't come to me. I'm not gonna embarrass you. I'm not gonna do what your friends would do. It's like
One of the things I always I try to recommend, if it's possible, and again, I know schedules are really hard, especially nowadays with all different rotating schedules with different work types and all, but if there's one meal at some point in the day that you can sit down and bringing back that entire opportunity to just sit and regroup, even if it is just 10 minutes. We're all on the fly, especially with the idea that our kids have to be in these extracurricular activities and they have to do this, that, and a third, and they should be doing this, that, and a third. And can you do breakfast together, even if it's 10 minutes? I know your kids probably don't want to wake up that extra 10 minutes early, but it could be really beneficial long-term to try and get that meal in together. Or make it a point on weekends when everybody's able to kind of pull back a little bit to brunch. I try to do a Sunday brunch or even a Saturday brunch, or we call it dinner, where you combine lunch and dinner together.
Yeah, that I'm more of a dinner person.
I'm all about dinner. We're doing it today, in fact.
Yeah, and I also find that when you were talking about the extracurriculars, that they shouldn't be doing all of that and then some, unless they make those choices. I never forced my son to do anything. There was one sport that I was really trying to detract from, and I finally let him do it. But it's like, I also remind him, this is your commitment. So if you sign up, you're doing it for the whole season. If you want to quit at the end of the season, fine. But you've made this commitment for this amount of time. And if you like it and you want to stay, wonderful. If you hate it, you're done at the end of the season.
Right. I agree. I'm in full agreement with that.
I work on the whole, okay, you committed to this, and let's see how this plays out.
But you try it, you give it a shot, you do make the full commitment. But I agree with you as far as the entire idea of extracurriculars also. And it's something that I like to, because forcing your child into something is going to disrupt any peace that is attempting to be reached for.
Yep.
Within the child, number one, because it could drum up a lot of anxiety, but then also within your home.
Yeah.
So that overall sense of peace is demolished, where that's where you're supposed to be creating it, is inside the home. And just allowing them to dictate what they wish to take part in, but also with the understanding, like you said, that it is a full-on commitment if they choose to do that, and not overwhelming them in their time with those commitments too, though, and realizing that there has to be a constant flow of work, extracurricular, and play. Because they're still kids. They're still kids.
They are. And then you always see them as kids, but yes, it's that balance, that delicate balance brings peace, especially to teenagers. Because if you keep them going, because you think they need to fall into a busyness trap, it's not good. That doesn't bring them peace. That actually, I find, would create a lot of anxiety.
Especially later on as they get older, because then they feel as though they have to continually maintain this pace. That's just not realistic. And it's not a necessity. And you hear parents a lot of times saying, well, it's keeping them out of trouble. They should be able to sit within themselves and sit within their home and not feel the need to engage in any sort of compromising behavior, because they are comfortable within themselves, their home, and their surroundings.
And
So
that
why are they not feeling that way? Why are they not feeling as though they are at peace at home in their surroundings with what they have available to them in that setting? And that you have to continually shuffle them from one thing to the next to keep them in order.
right. And I think that is a one of those, like you were certain we'll go back to the I have to keep you busy because I have to work and I want you to do, feel fulfilled. So I'm going to set you up with the chess club, the fence club, the swimming team.
Right,
And then you as a parent don't have any peace because you're shuffling and doing stuff around. And I believe that my for me personally, my children seeing me, I was like, okay, I can take a step back. Mommy doesn't seem to be in a hurry unless
right.
we're in a hurry. But so unless it's like morning and the bus has to leave and I'm the bus, it's like, come on.
That's
um
different. Those are necessities. That's kind of like a legal thing that if they don't go to school, that's a problem.
Problem, yeah. But taking a step back and saying, okay, I'm showing you I can do what I love and what I want. I can be responsible because you're going to have to be responsible when you grow up. And I can be a friend and be there for those I care about. And my children and my friends are of those, that people. My partner is of that people where we bring each other peace. But you like you said, you sit down and you do it. You don't have to constantly go, go, go.
Right, right.
And
So
being
how do you ever,
selective.
and how do you ever really learn your children if you're not actually taking a moment to sit
Right.
and see them engage with themselves and engage with you and engage with their siblings or other people that are within the home? How do you ever really learn who your children are if you're doing nothing but pushing them either which way and into all these other scenarios?
Right. And how do you help them find peace if they're never at having time to be peaceful?
Right, right.
And teaching them the techniques, walking around the block, going to the park, hitting the gym, which can be mind clearing, which brings you some peace and clarity.
100%. Or literally sitting on your couch and being able to disconnect from nowadays your phone and just sitting with your parents and your siblings. And one of the new things that so Santa brought my children lots of board games and
Yes.
different, so we've started to really incorporate that and seeing, and that brings my heart so much happiness because when my children are like, can we play checkers? I'm like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'll actually, and it's hard some days to push aside the work that I have to tend to or the different activities that I want to personally try to evolve into as well. But at the same time, like, yes, because now I'm seeing a whole different side. And that's one of the things that I also promote too, to allow other parents to see different sides to their children when it comes to things that are completely what seem to be taboo, not taboo, I shouldn't say taboo, but antiquated in
Antiquated.
today's day and age.
Yeah, antiquated. Board games would be seen as antiquated, but
Yeah.
they can be fun. I mean, when my son was younger, we would play Connect Four, we would play checkers, we played Monopoly, Junior Monopoly, because I have a problem playing actual real Monopoly. Junior Monopoly is so much easier.
Is it? Because I was going to say I don't have that one in my house because honestly, Monopoly itself is overwhelming for me.
Yeah, no, I don't play. I was never one to play actual Monopoly. It was like playing the game of Risk. It's like it's a 6-hour game,
Yeah.
and I'm not I'm not there anymore. I was like last time I literally played Risk. It's not that I couldn't play it. I was just like, this is going to take forever. Take my country. I was like, I was the first one. Take my country. And that's how I see Monopoly.
Waving the flag, right?
I give you my white flag. But Junior Monopoly is good. It teaches that, the basic concepts of money and property and fake.
Good
And
to know.
yeah,
Okay, good to
I
know because like I said, that's when
when
Santa did not bring for that reason.
but yeah, we used to play board games. And yes, it could be seen as antiquated in today's day and age, but sometimes you can't be glued. This is going to be an appendage one day.
Right.
And I'm not looking forward to that.
Yeah, neither am I. Neither am I. The days that the days you're able to leave it and not worry about whatever noise it's making,
Mhm.
those are the days I thrive on. And I think every child should really recognize that as well, that those dings and those pings and those noises,
Not that important.
right, they don't translate to happiness. They don't, and they will not bring you peace. They
No,
will not,
they will not.
because they are not what dictate who you are and what you are and what you can be at all.
I totally agree. I find more peace when I don't have it or
Mhm.
when I'm not staring at it all the time. So,
I think we are blessed to have come from a place where we didn't have it, so we know the difference.
yeah.
And I think we should all really look to try and allow our children to see that side of it all too, to see
Yeah.
both sides. That, yeah, absolutely, it's a benefit because it provides a different ability to expand, but then at the same time, it can be detrimental too also.
Yep. And it causes a lot of anxiety, especially in the adolescent. And I was bullied. You might have been bullied, but I was bullied. But back in the day, you could be bullied and then, go home and
Let's go.
complain
Let's
and
go.
it's done. It is not that way anymore. And it scares me,
Because it follows
especially,
you everywhere.
yeah, especially among the female population.
It's big. It's
It's,
big.
it's, it's harsh.
It's
And
scary
finding peace and disconnecting and saying, I don't care, which is so hard at that age.
because
It's
it does. It
hard.
follows. It follows them. It really, really does. And that is one of those things that I, I focus on heavily because we have to push it aside and we have to disconnect and we have to block and we have to remove whatever we can from your line of sight. And when I say we, I say I'm speaking to the teenage girls that I work with in particular,
Yeah.
because they can easily become obsessed with the comments and the constant the constant bullying and the constant commentary that follows anything that is being done anywhere. And that's really when you have to learn to pick, choose, dissect, and remove.
I love that. I love that. I'm gonna when I create a short, that's the one I'm gonna use because that's important. Um, so I want to thank you so much. We're going to end on that, and thank you so much for being a part of today's broadcast and being part of Unique Peace.
Thank you.
And in the comments, I'll get your website, and we'll put that up for anybody who is looking for a coach, especially for an adolescent who definitely needs the assistance. And you've tried everything, and you need to try something different.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time and sharing this opportunity with me. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And I'm going to thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next week.